My son threw me away after I built his empire. So I took everything back. Some parents spend their entire lives building a future for their children. They sacrifice their sleep, their dreams, their own happiness. I spent 30 years making sure my son would never struggle the way I did. But 3 words he said to me one night changed everything. You're no longer needed. What he didn't know was the man he was throwing away was the same man who built the entire life he was standing on. And when I finally walked away, he realized too late that he had destroyed the one person who was keeping everything together. My name is Richard Hayes. I'm 58 years old. For most of my life, I was the kind of man who believed that family came before everything. Money, success, pride, everything. I built my company from nothing. No investors, no parents, no shortcuts, just long nights, hard work, and a promise I made to myself when I was young. A promise that my children would never experience the kind of struggle I grew up with, because I knew what it felt like to have nothing. I grew up in a small apartment with my mother. My father left when I was 8 years old. I still remember standing near the window, waiting for his car to come back. It never did, and that empty feeling stayed with me forever. So when my son Michael was born, I made a promise. He would never wonder if someone cared about him. He would never feel abandoned. He would have every opportunity one never had. And for 30 years, I kept that promise. Michael was my only son. From the moment I held him in my arms, I knew I would do anything for him. When he wanted to play baseball, I was there. When he needed help with school, I stayed awake until midnight teaching him. When he wanted to start his first business, I gave him the money I'd saved for my retirement. My friends told me I was crazy. Richard, you work your whole life for that money. But I always said the same thing. What's the point of building something if you can't give it to the person you love? And that's where I made my biggest mistake. I thought giving someone everything would make them appreciate you. I didn't know. Sometimes giving someone everything teaches them they don't need you anymore. At 25, Michael started his own company. Or at least that's what everyone believed. The truth was, the company had my name on the paperwork. My investments paid for the first office. My connections brought the first clients. My reputation opened doors that were closed to him. But I didn't care. I wanted him to feel successful. I wanted him to believe he had built something. A proud father doesn't need credit. He just wants to see his child win. And watching him succeed was the happiest moment of my life. Until the day I noticed something changing. Michael stopped calling. At first, I didn't think much about it. He was busy. He was growing. He had responsibilities. I understood. A few missed calls became weeks without conversations. Family dinners became maybe next time. Advice became, Dad, you don't understand how things work anymore. Those words hurt, but I ignored them because parents have a strange habit. We keep making excuses for the people we love, even when they stop making excuses for us. Then, one Monday morning, I received an email. Not a phone call, not a conversation, an email. The subject line said, Company Restructuring Update. I opened it expecting some business information. Instead, I saw my son's name, and underneath it, a decision that would change everything. I stared at that email for almost 5 minutes. I read the first sentence. Then I read it again, because my brain refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. Michael had scheduled a company meeting. A meeting where he planned to announce a new leadership structure. And my position, the position I had held for 20 years, was being removed. At first, I thought there had to be some mistake. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe he wanted to change my role because I was getting older. Maybe he wanted me to finally retire. I could understand that. But then I saw one line that made my hands go cold. Richard Hayes will no longer have decision-making authority within a company. No discussion, no warning, no conversation between father and son. Just a sentence written by someone who shared my last name. I sat there in my office, the same office where I had spent thousands of nights building his future. And for the first time in my life, I felt like a stranger inside my own creation. I called Michael immediately, straight to voicemail. I waited 10 minutes. Called again. Nothing. So I sent him a message. Michael, we need to talk. I saw the announcement. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then 30. Finally, my phone lit up. It was him, but not with a call. With a text. Dad, I'm Busa. We'll discuss this at the meeting. That was it. No explanation. No apology. No, are you okay? Just a message from my son. Like I was some employee asking for a favor. The meeting was scheduled for Friday morning. I arrived early. I walked through the same office halls where employees used to shake my hand and thank me for giving them opportunities. But that morning, people avoided eye contact. Something had changed. Everyone knew. Everyone except me. I entered the conference room. Michael was already sitting at the head of the table. My chair, the chair I'd sat in for decades, was moved to the side. A small detail, but sometimes the smallest details reveal the biggest truths. Michael looked at me, not like a son looking at his father, like a CEO looking at a problem. Dad, I'm glad you came. I almost laughed. Glad I came? This was my company, my money, my sacrifice, my life. But I stayed quiet because I wanted to hear him explain. I wanted to believe there was still a good reason. Then he started speaking. The company has grown beyond one person. I nodded. He continued. We need younger leadership, someone who understands the future. I looked at him. Are you saying I don't understand the future? He sighed, and that sigh hurt more than any insult, because it wasn't anger. It was annoyance, like I was making things difficult. Dad, don't make this emotional. Those words hit me harder than I expected. Don't make this emotional. The same son whose first steps I recorded. The same son whose hospital bed I slept beside. The same son whose dreams I paid for. Was telling me not to make it emotional. Then he said something I would never forget. You have to understand, this company wouldn't be where it is today if I hadn't taken it to the next level. I looked around the room, at the walls, at the awards, at the photos, at everything I built, and I finally understood. Michael didn't just forget what I did. He had rewritten history. In his mind, he was the hero of a story I spent my entire life creating. But I still didn't fight. I didn't yell. I didn't expose every sacrifice I made. I simply asked one question. Michael, why didn't you talk to me before making this decision? For a moment, he looked uncomfortable. Then he answered, because I knew you wouldn't agree. And there it was, the truth. He didn't want a conversation. He wanted permission after the decision was already made. I left that meeting quietly. No argument, no scene, no event. At least, not yet. Because that day, I learned something important. The most dangerous person isn't the one who gets angry. It's the person who becomes completely silent. And on that day, I stopped being the father trying to save his son. I became the man who was about to take back everything he built. For 3 days, I did nothing. No calls, no messages, no arguments. Michael probably thought I was defeated. He probably believed I was sitting at home, angry and emotional, waiting for him to apologize. But he didn't understand something. I spent 30 years building a company. And building a company teaches you one important lesson. Never react when you're angry. Observe, wait, understand, then make your move. My wife, Linda, noticed something was different. She had been married to me for 32 years. She knew my expressions. She knew my silence. She knew when something was bothering me. One night, while we were sitting at the dinner table, she finally asked, Richard, what are you going to do? I looked at her, and for the first time in days, I felt calm. I'm going to let him have exactly what he wants. She looked confused. What does that mean? I smiled. It means I'm going to step away. The next morning, I signed the documents. I officially resigned from my position. Everyone expected me to fight. The board expected a battle. The employees expected drama. But instead, I walked into the office, shook everyone's hands, and left. Michael watched me from his office window. He probably thought he won. He didn't know. I wasn't walking away because I lost. I was walking away because I finally understood the game. What Michael didn't know was something very important. The company wasn't built only with money. It was built with relationships. The biggest clients, the most important contracts, the partnerships that kept everything alive. They weren't connected to Michael. They were connected to me. For years, I had protected my son's reputation. When he made mistakes, I fixed them. When he failed, I covered for him. When clients became angry, I stepped in. Michael thought he was carrying the company. But the truth was, I was carrying him. A week after I left, things started changing. Small problems appeared. A major client delayed renewing their contract. A supplier questioned new decisions. Employees started noticing mistakes. Michael called me. The first call in weeks. I looked at my phone. His name appeared on the screen. For a moment, I wanted to answer, because no matter what someone does, a part of you still hopes they will realize their mistake. But I let it ring. Then I received a voicemail. "Dad, we need to talk." I listened. His voice sounded different. Less confident. Less powerful. Almost scared. The next day, he came to my house. Not as a CEO. Not as a successful businessman. Just as my son. He stood at my door. The same door he had walked through thousands of times as a child. "Dad." I looked at him. "What happened?" He looked down. "The company is having problems." I stayed silent, because I already knew. Then he said the words I never thought I would hear. "I might need your help." Years ago, I would have opened that door immediately. I would have forgotten everything. I would have fixed the problem, because that's what fathers do. But this time was different. I didn't hate him. I wasn't trying to destroy him. I just wanted him to understand something. A person who only values you when they need you never truly valued you. I looked at Michael and asked, "Do you know why the company is struggling?" He looked confused. "I need your experience?" I shook my head. "No, because you lost the one thing you never thought you needed." He stared at me. "What's that?" I answered quietly. "Respect." For the first time, Michael had no response, because deep down, he knew I was right. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. Because the biggest betrayal wasn't removing me from the company. The biggest betrayal was what I discovered after leaving. Something Michael had been hiding for months. Something that changed everything. The truth was, Michael had spent years believing success meant replacing the people who helped him get there. But that day, standing in front of me, he finally understood something. A company can't survive without money. It can survive without fancy offices. It can survive without a famous name. But it cannot survive without trust. I didn't take revenge by destroying his life. I didn't need to. I simply stopped protecting him from the consequences of his own choices. A month later, Michael came back to the company. Not as the arrogant CEO who thought he knew everything, but as a son who finally understood the value of his father's sacrifice. He apologized. Not a quick apology. Not words said because he needed something. A real apology. "I was so focused on proving I could build something," he said, "that I forgot who built the foundation." I listened quietly, because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And love doesn't mean allowing someone to hurt you forever. I helped him rebuild. But this time, I didn't carry him. I taught him how to stand. Years later, when people asked me about my greatest achievement, they expected me to mention the company, the money, the success. But I always gave the same answer. My greatest achievement wasn't building a business. It was learning that sometimes the best way to help someone grow is to finally let them fall. Because the hardest revenge isn't watching someone fail. The hardest revenge is letting them realize they lost the one person who was always fighting for them.